Hello, and welcome to the movie universe. I'm your host, Movie Fiend. Today, as promised, is part 2 to my Dare to Compare video. Last week it was Mighty Morphin Power Rangers on the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis. Today it will be Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie on Super Nintendo and, of course, the Sega Genesis. And as before, I will be comparing to which ones are more true to the actual movie. Let us begin.
Just like last time, we're starting with the Super Nintendo game. Now, as you can see, it says Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie featuring Ivan Ooze. Hold on to that thought because it's actually quite important. You start off, you get to select your Power Ranger, and if you're up to date on Power Rangers, by this time we have 3 new ones. We have Rocky, Adam, and Aisha, the new red, yellow, and black Rangers. But we also have Tommy, who is the White Ranger in this case, because by this time he had already lost his Green Ranger powers, so now he is the White Ranger. When you choose your Ranger and start the game, just like in the first game, you are out of costume. You are your actual Power Ranger character, which is great. I still love that. And unlike the first 2 games, you actually have the ability to jump back and forth in the screen on 2 different playing fields. You just have to push the L or the R button to do so. It can be helpful because there are times that there are motorcycles or cars coming in the way, and the putties will get hit, and well, you're safe. But it can also be a hindrance because there are quite a few levels where you have to literally jump back and forth and jump back into one certain playing field so you don't get killed. Pretty much for most of the game, you're fighting putties. And when you beat up the putties, you get power symbols. When you use those power symbols, you can power up. And when you power up, you can morph. Or, as I prefer to do it, you wait until you face the monster, then you automatically morph. Then you just fight the monster that's on this level, and unfortunately, unlike the first game, you do not get the weapons. You're automatically just relying on your fists. You can get the weapons if you get enough power to use them, but I often find I never have enough power so I can use them, because the problem is you have to have it all the way up. So pretty much the whole time, I'm just using my fists. That is a serious step down from the first game, I'll tell you that right now. And of course, just like the first 2 games, we are still templated after Red Ranger. The only Power Ranger that actually looks different is White Ranger. But that pales in comparison to the 2 biggest problems this game has. The first and most obvious, this game has absolutely nothing to do with the movie. In fact, throughout this whole entire game, you're fighting putties and Lord Zedd's monsters. Ivan Ooze does not show up until the very end, and I only made it back there one time. Which brings me to my second biggest problem. This game is relentlessly difficult. I've made it pretty far, but I can never finish the game. Like I said before, I only got to Ivan Ooze one time, and I've never beaten him. And of course, if you're expecting Ninja Megazord to make an appearance, he doesn't. The only thing that comes out, at least what I've seen anyway, is a blue hand comes out and grabs you just when the place is going to blow up. And you see Ninja Megazord just looking at Ivan Ooze's base, which, again, never happened in the movie at all. And even worse, you don't get to play as Ninja Megazord. What's a Power Rangers game without playing as the Megazord? Despite these problems, I do have fun playing it, and there is actually a plus. Unlike the first 2 games, this is actually a 2-player game. So you get to team up with a friend and beat down Lord Zedd's monsters, and hopefully Ivan Ooze. But it is tricky to try to get the coordination right, because if you haven't played it long enough together, someone's going to get killed in this game. But once again, the game's biggest flaw is the fact that it has absolutely nothing to do with the movie. Either way, there's nothing more I could say about the Super Nintendo version, so let's move on to the Sega Genesis version and see how that one looks. Right off the bat, this game is starting to feel like a real Power Rangers game because it automatically starts off with that whole opening speech straight out of the movie, and with that famous movie poster. And after you pick your Ranger, the fun immediately begins. A lot like in the Sega Genesis version of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, you're automatically in costume. There is no scene where you fight out of costume. But that's okay, because you know what? Right off the bat, you're fighting the right enemies. Ivan Ooze's Ooze Men. That's straight out of the movie. In fact, they actually look like the characters from the movie. And even better yet, their costumes actually are not templated after Red Ranger. Their helmets look exactly like they're supposed to be. So finally, we have a Power Rangers game where the Rangers are not templated after Red Ranger. So we're already off to a very great start for this game. You fight Ivan's Ooze men, and unlike the Super Nintendo version, you get to use the weapons. And it's really quite simple. All you have to do is just push the B button multiple times, and after a few punches, you get to use your weapon. Or you could just hold down the B button, and after one punch, it charges up, and you get to do a special move with your weapon. There's also a special spinning roundhouse jump kick that you can actually use if you push the A button. Unfortunately, it does deplete some of your life, so I would only use that in an emergency. And if you're wondering what the C button does, it makes you jump, that's all. And just like with Power Rangers the movie on Super Nintendo, this is actually a two-player game as well, and you can have a lot of fun with two people. The only catch is, if you grab an enemy and throw him and your friend is right in front of you, he's going to get hit with the enemy. But that's not too big of a problem, because you have a freer range of movement than any of the games. You can just walk up and down, left and right. None of the games have that, so you got a lot of space to work with. You can also power up your health or get extra credits for the other Power Rangers by collecting power coins that appear. This could be very helpful later, because if you end up getting killed, you can bring back any Power Ranger that you want. Just looking at it, it actually feels like an arcade game. If you play it solo, you can see credit number 5 right up there in the far right corner. You basically play 2 levels with the Ooze Men, and then you get to fight the Hornetron and Scorpiotron Mechnomorphicon monsters. When you fight them, you get the choice of Falcon Zord or Ninja Megazord. If you think playing solo is awesome, you should play it with 2 players, because in this case you get both the Ninja Megazord and the Falcon Zord. It is awesome to play with 2 people, because with both Zords, you are virtually unstoppable. After you defeat the Hornetron and destroy the Scorpiotron, you get a whole flashback sequence talking about how Rocky, Adam, and Aisha got involved, and how White Ranger first made the scene. Now I will admit, that does not follow the movie at all, because as we all know, that stuff happened in the series. But you know what? That's okay, because during this time, we get the opportunity to play as Jason, Zack, and Trini. But you better make your choices, because you won't have them for very long. Even more surprising, we're fighting putties, and we're fighting some of the monsters like Lord Zed's Sentinels. We even get a couple Megazord battles playing as Thunder Megazord or Mega Tiger Zord. And after we get through those series of flashbacks, we're back to being right in the present, where we get to fight Ivan Ooze, who is now combined with the Hornetron, which is straight out of the movie. The only complaint I have is, Ivan Ooze doesn't look anything like he did in the movie when he combined with the Hornetron. But I will tell you this, when you fight him, get ready, because he fights dirty. You get 2 rounds with him, one on Earth and one in space. And after you beat him within an inch of his life, you get the whole sequence where they're fighting up in the stars, and Ryan's comet comes up and destroys Ivan Ooze, turning him into space dust. Again, straight out of the movie. Now this game is actually trying its hardest to be just like the movie, but it one-ups it with some special sequences. For instance, the flashback, the whole fighting as Jason, Trini, and Zack, and of course fighting as Thunder Megazord and Mega Tiger Zord. There's also some hidden surprises in here. For instance, if you listen closely to the soundtrack, you can actually hear some of the music that was straight out of the series. For instance, when you first do the flashback, you're actually hearing the song Go Green Ranger. Which would have been a lot more awesome if I could fight as Green Ranger right now. But it doesn't matter, because I'm still blown away that I'm actually hearing songs from the series. And there's even a small little shout out to Ron Wasserman, because when you fight the Oozemen, if you look right up there in the far right area, right there, you actually see the sign, "We Need a Hero," written right there on that cafe. That is one of Ron Wasserman's most famous songs for Power Rangers back in Season 1 and Season 2. Wow, I was not expecting them to give a huge shout out to Ron Wasserman like that.
So once again, we have two really awesome games for the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis. Now for the big question. Which one is more true to the movie? Well, I think you already know the answer to that one. Obviously, the Sega Genesis. And it's because it actually does follow the movie, to a point. When you do that whole flashback sequence where you see how Rocky, Adam, and Aisha entered the scene, that was what I would call filler. But you do get some real awesome stuff here. I mean, you get to play as the original Red, Black, and Yellow Ranger. For a while, anyway. And not to mention, you get to play as Thunder Megazord or White Tiger Megazord, which is really awesome. The only way they could have made that even better is if you went all the way back to Megazord and Dragonzord. Even with all that filler, it's still good because it is true to the movie. I mean, you fight those Oozemen just like in the movie. And of course, you fight the Hornetron and Scorpiotron Mechnomorphicon monsters just like in the movie. And of course, you do get to fight Ivan Ooze in that whole Mega Hornetron Ivan Ooze form. Which is great because, you know, that's what we were all hoping for. Compared to the Super Nintendo, where you do not get any airtime with Ivan Ooze at all, except for the very end, which I have not gotten to because this game is relentlessly difficult. And it's even harder to play in two-player mode. Whereas for here, it's a little easier, except for the flaw of when you toss the Oozeman or the putty, it hits your other guy if you're too close. And not to mention, I do hate that you don't get the ability to use your weapons, whereas for here, you do. The funny thing is, it's literally reversed from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers in both games. Because remember, in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers on Super Nintendo, you could use the weapons, and you had some cool tricks. Whereas for the other one, you had a heck of a time getting the weapons, and it was relentlessly difficult. And it was not true to the series. But here, you can barely use the weapons at all, except for like when you power up your meter, and it's relentlessly difficult, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the movie. Whereas for here, you have the ability to use your weapons, it is true to the movie, it is very true to the series as well, and not to mention, you get all this bonus Easter egg stuff of, "We Need a Hero" written on that sign out in the background, the music of Go Green Ranger, and I think I heard "I Will Win and Fight" right in the background. How awesome is that? This game actually has the music from Power Rangers the series. None of the other games have that. Sure, they have Go Go Power Rangers, but they don't have all those other songs. So yeah, this is definitely the winner. And that finishes my little two-part video of Dare to Compare. I hope you enjoyed it. This is Movie Fan, signing off.